Camille, welcome back.
Alrighty. Hello.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're here for part two. Why don't you give us just the briefest intro and we'll get right started.
Yeah, so I am a software engineer, have been for over a decade, and again, for the last 6 years, I have been working mostly in developer experience, and most recently as one of the core co-maintainers of the Apollo MCP server.
Very cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. And for those of you who haven't seen part one yet, I'll post the link in the description, obviously, so y'all can get caught up. But this will be a separate conversation, so feel free to watch them in whatever order you like. We can Tarantino this, or you can watch it chronologically, whatever you like. So yeah, let's get started. So, I think all of us, have had to adjust, all of us in software, and honestly, in any kind of knowledge work, I suppose, had to adjust to this new era. So curious, what got turned upside down for your work with the rise of agents? Like,
Uh,
what changed? What didn't change? I don't know. Tell me more.
Oh, wow. What didn't change is actually, well, I'll start with what changed. And the thing that changed for me was surprising. Um, and I'm glad that I caught it about a year and a half ago. Um, and that was the incredible importance, and even stronger importance on engineers understanding systems, and being able to speak intelligently about the systems that they have built or the systems that they are about to build. And I'm speaking again as an engineer who works with LLMs to build things like harnesses or just, generate code or generate workflows um, for feature builds. And one of the things that, consistently is shown is the things that LLMs seem to not be good at is building and making decisions about the systems that we need. They do not have the historical context of why, for an existing system, a particular decision was made. They do not have all of the context on the new system that might be built from a business perspective or just from like a human constraints perspective. So I think that was a very interesting surprise was the extreme need for deep technical leadership and technical knowledge. Um,
Oh,
that's really
deep
what's
technical
what's really,
leadership.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it because in many ways, if you over explain to an LLM, I don't know if you can over explain in a lot of ways. They're not going to necessarily get implication or the next logical step in the same way that a sentient being would. Um, I guess that's the whole point of context engineering, or am I oversimplifying that?
I think I don't think you're oversimplifying, but I think one of the things that we miss is um, LLMs have this inability to, first of all, of course, as you just mentioned, uh, except for I think Codex has a new, as of this recording, has a new model Soul that has an incredible ability to parse large systems, but it still doesn't stop it from, building helpers that already exist or being, as I'd say, tautological or duplicative. Um, and no matter what I have done, at least, I've used Gherkin style ACs and asked it to break down each feature request into, a bunch of, as I said, if, when, then statements. I've
Mm.
used TDD. I've attempted to constrain it at the development level as much as possible while giving it as much business context as possible. And there seems to be a certain limit on the efficacy of doing so. Um, Either you're just building an entire, not necessarily a harness, but an entire system that you're attempting to not have break or build things that you don't want to. And at that point, you might as well build it yourself. Um, and I think that's the thing that has been really interesting is we still haven't, LLMs still haven't been able to master thinking and be able to make qualified decisions based on a lot of experience. And that's why I say technical leadership is really important. Being able to understand the risks based on a legacy system is
Mm,
still extremely invaluable. But also being able to understand the risks that occur in building a new large system um, is super invaluable. Like I have the book by Martin Kleppman,
yeah,
Designing Data Intensive Applications. Uh,
uh,
you can chalk that
good one.
as much as you want into an LLM. It's still not going to make uh, the unique system that you need for you. You still have to make those decisions, and that, to me at least, requires that expertise. Um, so that's the thing that I found surprising. I think there was a lot of talk that it could do everything, and
Mm.
LLMs don't. Um, so I think that's the thing that has changed. What has stayed the same? I almost want to throw that question back at you because I'm really interested uh, from your perspective. Not being deep in developing an open source project or something, what that looks like. Um,
Well, I think you really hit the nail on the head when you were framing this discussion, which I think like the need to deeply understand your domain and to apply technical leadership. And I think, what I think about open source is probably the exact same. I've spoken to a few open source developers on the channel, and having worked in that myself, I think the common thread is, maybe the way that the specific application you open or the amount of time, the amount of keys that you press in the coding process maybe changes quite a bit. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to um, have a plan. A lot of times the courtesy to the maintainers is still very much an important thing. Like, if you come in with a pull request with no context and everything like that, it's going to be treated differently than if you contacted the maintainers ahead of time, talked about, the kind of thing you're trying to do and projected your intent as to how it might make sense to do it and sought feedback. Those sorts of early kind of planning steps are worth more than ever now because there's so few people that take the time to do it, which, hey, if you're saving a ton of time at the keyboard with the coding bit, use that time really well. And part of that time is that collaboration and that human process that we should all be making more time for that. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably what stayed the same as the imperative to project your intent, to be specific about what you want to do, and to bring others along with you. If anything, that's just become should be a bigger part of our day to day. If we're abstracting away some of the toil involved in coding.
I think one thing that has come up a lot that both of our sentiments have brought up or echo is again, there's a conversation that code is now cheap. Um,
Mm-mm.
but with uh, the faucet now on high, with the amount of code that's out there, because it's apparently now cheap, the thing that, as you said, not only stays the same, but is even more important are those people who can filter um, what is important, what is good code and what is not, but also who can filter what is a good feature decision to make or refactoring decision to make, or who can really understand what decision needs to be included and what needs to be cut. Um, and there's been a lot of conversation around that. The bottleneck no longer, or the bottleneck that we thought was code is in fact uh, product or product decisions, or just making generally the right decisions around what to build. Uh,
Yeah,
so
like creativity, right? Like
yeah,
music notes are cheap. There's only 12 of them, but yet we've only had the handful of folks that we could compare to whoever, Mozart
Yep.
or Michael Jackson or whoever. And
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it's their some special quality that they bring and skill that they bring to bear that really makes all the difference.
Hmm.
They got the same tools as the rest of us.
Yep. Agreed.
So I need your advice. We're both GraphQL people, and I
Mm.
know that comes with a certain reverence for the art and science. I think somewhat in equal measure of API design. Um, AI, though, a lot of times seems to encourage us to run right past that and do code mode for everything. And, as you pointed out, there's sometimes some duplication in there, like, hey, they don't care if they're re-implementing a method. And that's been my lived experience too. And how do we reconcile these two ways of doing things? These folks who care deeply about, a well-composed platform, a thought-through API, but also the imperative to be like, well, okay, how do we make this great promise of accelerating productivity real? I don't know. How do we put those two together in a way that makes us all sit right?
Oh, that's a really tough one that we grapple with, especially on the Apollo MCP server regularly. It's really interesting because I'll just take the example of MCP tooling and MCP servers out there in the wild. It's funny because a trend that I've noticed with MCP tools or MCP servers is they're leading more and more towards what GraphQL always was.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that, like a concrete example is, I believe Cloudflare, unless they've changed their server over the last, couple weeks or a month or so, have, I believe, two tools that they expose in their MCP server. And it's funnily search and execute. Um, if you know anything about Apollo MCP,
Interesting.
interesting. If you know anything about Apollo MCP server or about the ideas of GraphQL, um, we too expose search and execute. Um, and it just makes clear that there's a trend that I think is going to continue of thinking about accessing information, uh, not in a restful way, but in this like demand generated data fetching way where where it's gated behind an introspection tool in MCP server or a search tool. Um, and so I think that's really favorable to, it kind of validates what I and what we at GraphQL have always been doing, which is kind of nice. But the problem, not the problem, but the challenge now is that the API design that GraphQL solves is kind of now being done in this case, except through, if you're using our product, through the LLM.
Hmm.
And that brings a level of like errors. The cost is now errors, or the incorrect tool being selected. Um, and that's the token, that's like a token cost now. And so, when you think about companies who are trying to move to that kind of solution, um, where they allow their data, with restrictions to be explored, introspected and explored in order for agents to get the answers that they want. Um, the question now becomes, how do you refine and correct your agent or your agent to be able to select the correct data? Um,
Hmm.
that's the real question that I think that a lot of people are trying to answer technically, even us. And we
Sure.
have a few answers, um, but I think that continues. Uh, the base solutions that you can start right away, I think, if you're developing an MCP server, is to make sure that the tools serve the intent that your customers or the agentic client may have, if you know what that intent looks like. If there's a range of questions that your chatbot agent is going to request or answer from an MCP server. Split your tools in that way rather than splitting them along the lines of like your API, your REST endpoints. I think that's
Mm.
one of the big things is like tool design becomes really important. I think
Is
that's
tool
number one.
design sort of an extension of API design, or are they one and the same? I don't know.
I would, yeah, at this point, I feel like this is my argument for for it being yes. But it also depends on, you know, who is who is still accessing that data. There are still non-agentic clients that still need to access your data. Are you going to attempt to build two different types of systems? Um, Again, this is where Apollo MCP server really comes comes in handy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're all asking ourselves this question, right? And I feel like tooling that comes along with with a viewpoint on that, um, kind of has a way of sharpening the conversation. I do think, if you have a well thought out schema, then your applications and your agents can probably make really good use of it. And if you abstract it away from the underlying data architecture, which is there for a variety of layered reasons and sometimes contradictory reasons, maybe you're pulling out design that works for the user, whoever that might be or whatever that might be.
And there's also historical reasons. You might be moving. We've seen, enterprises moving or attempting to tent MCP servers on API REST endpoints that were built for in a backend or front end way for their websites for specific pages. And that doesn't
Hmm.
translate well when you have an agent asking questions about three or four endpoints that might be, you know, that causes a whole host of problems that I won't get into now. So, um, I don't want to keep touting GraphQL, but that is where the ability to control those, have a layer where you can control what that schema looks like, that gets directly translated into tools without having to change your
Hmm.
current architecture is also, kind of a plus. But yeah, that would be one of the ways. It's like really think about, if you can, the range of intent that your agentic client or clients would be asking the MCP
Yeah.
server and design your tools in that way.
Show us something on your desk or within arm's reach. I ask this of everybody and talk about it.
Okay.
Plus, we had a live animal on the show. That was fun.
Oh, that is cool. um, my desk is a mess, but I did have something that I did want to show, which kind of goes towards a previous theme that we were just talking about. So this is a
Oh.
book that I purchased maybe 15 or so years ago and still pick it up like once a month, and it gives me a bit of a chuckle. It's by a Canadian I think Nova Scotian. Hopefully, Kate, if you're not listening, but if you are, I hope that I hope that I'm getting the region right. But a fellow Canadian, Kate Beaton, who was a historian, and decided to start drawing these historically inaccurate satires of Victorian women. Um, and this is one of them. It's one of my favorites. Step Aside Pops. So
I love
I
it.
really love these.
I'll keep an
And
eye out.
please do.
Step aside, Pops. All right. Well, I must say, Victorian era illustrations was not where I expected this conversation to end up, and here we are. That was so cool. Camille, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all of your insights. I mean, what a remarkable time we're in. What an interesting time to be working at the intersection of GraphQL and artificial intelligence and all the other bells and whistles that we get to play with every day in this world we call software engineering. So thanks a bunch. It's really, truly appreciated by the audience.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff.